Recently, I talked in community about some of the changes that I've made in my personal life and how I feel like that has really put me back in a place where I feel good about my spiritual health and how I'm hearing from God all over again. Stopped drinking, started working out more, started paying more attention to my diet, and how that has really helped me return to some of the things I felt was missing spiritually in my life. I'll show that clip in just a second. But before it, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of dualism. Because sometimes in Greek Western thought, we fall into this trap of imagining that who you really are, who I am, is what happens up here. And our bodies are little more than vessels that carry us through life. And I think there's a real detriment to that. First, because it leads us to the conclusion that what really matters is what happens after we die. I mean, our bodies are just going to go into the grave and decompose anyway. What's really important about us must be our choices, our spirit, our spirituality. And that has two detrimental impacts. First, that I think it betrays the real gift of embodied life that God has given to us. This idea that all of you is gift, every rise and fall of your chest is the gift of life that God has offered to you. You're not honoring all of that well, but also it betrays the idea that you are an embodied person. And there is no way to be mentally healthy. There is no way for you to be spiritually attuned without caring for everything that is you. Now, of course, different parts of our lives are at different trajectories, and sometimes we're doing well here and not over here. But to think that those are disconnected, that your mental health is completely separate from your physical health, that your physical health is completely separate from your spiritual health, I don't think that's a helpful or even an honest way to approach this gift that is life. Your relationships, your physicality, your mental health, your spiritual health, your prayer life, all of this is you. You are this constellation of stars that make up an image that defines you. And sometimes we get a little too fixated on one star, not another. And part of being healthy is returning to this holistic imagination that I think the Hebrew scriptures and certainly the teachings of Jesus keeps calling us back to. You are an embodied gift of the divine, and you will do well when you care for all of the aspects of that life. Right, like when he narrates this moment, there's this first step where the bones come together and the tendons appear and muscles grow and skin covers, but he says this really interesting thing. He says there was no life in them. And so then he's told to prophesy breath, and when he does, the Lord breathes into them and they come alive again. And we should be careful with this passage because in Hebrew thought, they absolutely did not hold to the same kind of Greek dualism that we sometimes do. This idea that our minds and our bodies are really separate and that we, us, are ghosts trapped in these machines that we call bodies. That's not how Hebrews thought about themselves. But I do think Ezekiel is naming something very important here. That to be human and to be fully alive is to be both embodied and enlivened. And what I mean by that is that when you find yourself in that very low place, you're not going to find your way out just by thinking better thoughts. Like bones and tendons and muscle and skin, this is as much part of you as everything that happens up here. Now, I don't think Ezekiel is talking about your workout regimen. Like, I think he's talking about reminding his people that God cares about their embodied experience of the world. But I'll tell you what, I might be talking about your workout regimen here. A few years ago, I didn't have a great time during that whole panoramic era. Granted, very few of us did. But I had spent 20 years before that being a pastor and building community, and all of a sudden I was a YouTuber, and it just wasn't a lot of fun. And so the truth is, I picked up some bad habits, and I wasn't looking after myself particularly well. But as I finally started to come out of that and feel like myself again, I realized that if I wanted to continue on that trajectory, then I needed to make some changes in my life. And for me, that meant I stopped drinking, and I started working out more regularly, and I started paying attention to how many calories I was eating. Now, not to cut them down, it was actually to make sure I was getting enough each day, but those physical choices have dramatically helped me get back to a place where I feel like I can hear from God again.
And look, we all have different stories, and we all have different limitations in our physical bodies, in our time, in our capacity, in our mental energy. But if we don't pay attention to this, it gets really hard for Spirit to breathe into this. Now, at the same time, hear me, you can work out every day and eat healthy and never touch a drop and do all the right things, and that will not bring you all the way back to the joy that lifts you out of the pit. This is not a pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of sermon. Remember, for Ezekiel, bones came together, skin began to grow, muscles returned, and they were not yet alive. And look, unremarkable cards on the table here. I'm a religious person. So I think beyond all the work that we put in, I do believe that my breath is Spirit, that it is God that animates all of us every day, that every rise and fall of all of our chests is gift. But what I take from Ezekiel here is that all of us need more than calories, we need a story. Because hope is that trajectory that points us forward. Life is about this narrative that drives us on, and joy is this sense that there is purpose behind the beating of your heart, that same heart that you look after every day. And that purpose doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be world-changing or earth-shattering. It can be as simple as being a better friend today than you were yesterday, or more kind than you were last week, or more caring than what has been offered to you in your life. That's a good purpose for you. But when that purpose begins to feel like it has been breathed into you by something beyond you, and it actually begins to animate your physical presence here in the world, then I honestly believe that there is a joy that can heal dry bones and breathe new life into all of us.
Hey, thanks for making it all the way through that. We really appreciate the click. We really appreciate the watch. And if you're intrigued by the work that we're doing here at Commons, we'd love to continue that journey with you. Give us a like, a subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, but we'd love to hear from you in the comments. And you can also check out our Discord server, where we're encouraging the community to have all kinds of conversations about the way of Jesus and how we do our best to follow it today.